All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Monday night edition of the People's Show. I'm not quite certain what's going on with our Twitter account, but there seems to be some issue there. But hopefully, you all can, if you can't get me there, hopefully they will switch over to YouTube or to Facebook or to Instagram. All right, it's Monday, July the 22nd, and of course we are 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and of course 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Well, what a rocky period of time that we've had over the last 48 hours, and I don't know about you, but I'm certainly not happy about it by any stretch of the imagination as to what they actually did. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about President Biden being pushed out by the corporatist elites, namely Barack Obama being cowardice and not standing up for Joe Biden, James Carville, David Axelrod, and all of those Democratic elites. Now, in full disclosure, I am a Democrat and will be a Democrat, but I am not in love with the Democratic Party. In other words, I'm not a loyalist. I just happen to know that that is the party by which all of the gains that we as Black people in this country have benefited from, not the other party. Now, so we're going to be talking about that. Also going to talk about today, I testified at I didn't testify, I gave public comments. Full disclosure, I gave public comments at the Board of Cook County Commissioners for the first time since I've been in Chicago, and certainly for the first time since I've been an advocate for social justice and equity here in Chicago and Cook County in the state of Illinois. And I support the Cook County Assessor, Fritz Kagi, who is doing all that he can to right a ship that has been a disadvantaged, disproportionate, corrupt assessors and board of review agency for decades here in Cook County. It is one of the most complicated offices in all of government in Cook County, really probably in the state of Illinois. So, but we've had nothing but a bunch of corruption in that office. And those offices are held and were held by Democrats. I am not in any way saying that Democrats are any less corrupt than Republicans. There are some Democrats, one was just convicted of all kinds of 19 felony counts last week? Bob Menendez from New Jersey, for being an agent and taking bribes and all that sort of stuff, selling his office. A jury of his peers found him guilty on all counts. I don't know if it was 12, whatever they were, that he was found guilty. So But so I'm not giving Democrats a pass on being corrupt any more than I would Republicans. I happen to be a registered Democrat, and I happen to think that the Democratic Party moves agendas that are beneficial to the Black community and to average working families in this country more so than Republicans. I have challenged people at great length to bring me a piece of legislation that was authored and debated and passed by Republicans that benefit average working people in the country and Black people in this country in the last 50 years. I'm giving you a half of a decade to bring me any policy. Now, I'm not talking about a policy that a president signed off on who happened to be a Republican, like Ronald Reagan signed off on the Dr. King birthday as being a holiday, but he didn't want the holiday. He didn't support it, but he had to politically sign off on it because it was passed through Congress. That was a democratically led initiative. Just as Juneteenth was a democratically led initiative, but it was signed into law by this current president, Joseph Biden. So we're going to be talking about that. So I testified today at the Cook County Board, and the Inspector General, who happens to be a Black man, found that there was language within a county code as it relates to designations of mixed-use properties that allowed for, if you have a building with one apartment in it, and you could have that building could be 40,000 square feet of commercial space, and you could have one apartment there, that building will get designated as residential, meaning that we would lose and have been losing the those large properties from paying their fair share as a commercial property. Well, the Inspector General found that there was a loophole within the ordinance, or that was in the law, and suggested that the language be changed. And so the Cook County assessor did their analysis and made the change. And so those properties that have been getting away for decades of not paying their true assessed valuation of taxes now have to pony up. And what you had is BOMA, which is an organization that represents wealthy property owners, largely downtown, and advocate on behalf of giving wealthy property owners as many breaks, tax breaks, whatever, and shifting that burden of those tax cuts onto the homeowners, largely on the south and southern suburbs and the western side of the city and the west suburbs. So they shift hundreds of millions of dollars in tax cuts that's given to wealthy property owners because they don't want to pay their real value of taxes. So they buy a building for $30 million, and then they get the building appeal, have the taxes appeal so that it could be assessed at a $20 million. Well, that $10 million tax cut that they get successfully doesn't go away. The homeowners are saddled with those taxes. So whatever those cuts are, they get spread upon the homeowners in the district. Larry Rogers Jr. is on the board of review, and Larry Rogers Jr. is owned by BOMA and the wealthy property tax owners. Larry Rogers Jr. is a black man. He's an attorney who represents personal injury cases and that sort of thing, and has done very well. He's also owned by those wealthy property owners who their tax appeal attorneys plunge hundreds of thousands of dollars into Larry Rogers Jr.'s campaign. And therefore, as a result of that, Larry Rogers Jr. then gives those tax breaks to those tax appeal attorneys for the rich property owners, and hundreds of millions of dollars you and I as homeowners on the south and west sides of Chicago have to pay for it. The point is, it is like you sending some of them or to a steak dinner, to a really nice restaurant. They get to have a steak. They get to have their filet mignon. They get to have their cocktails, their dessert. Only you and I pay for it. They don't pay for it. That's what that's like. So the average tax bill to the average homeowner, 20% of a commercial property tax cuts have been shifted onto homeowners. Now, most of us do not know and did not know that this practice has been going on. I'm in a real estate business, been in a real estate business for over 40 years. Have not really paid a whole lot of attention to this until Fritz Kage came in to office. We knew that that office was corrupt with their predecessors and that sort of thing. Joseph Berrios, and piling that office with all of his buddies and his family, not really working on behalf of the public. And working with Fritz Kage, I got a real education as to what is going on and why property taxes, why homeowners are not getting a break, why homeowners are always the ones footing the bill. The average working person or retired person, or even poor people, are footing the bill for very wealthy people. Now, I don't have any problem with wealth whatsoever. I have a little bit of my own. I don't have any problem with people becoming wealthy. What I do have a problem with is people who are wealthy or become wealthy that don't want to pay their fair share. You earn more, you get more, you're required to share more, to pay your fair part, to pay your fair share. If you don't want to pay, don't own the properties. Don't ask for the benefit. Don't buy them. But don't, as a wealthy person, think that it is okay for you, as a wealthy person, to shift the burden or your tax burdens onto people who can least afford it, who are already struggling to pay their own. And Larry Rogers Jr., and I hope that this gets to him, I, for the first time, have commented at the Cook County Board of Commissioners. And I have put them on notice that I am going to be acutely focused on paying attention to this and making sure that the people of Cook County knows who their representatives are, knows who their friends are, and who are not their friends. And you are not automatically black people's friend because you share the same texture color. And Larry Rogers Jr. is someone who 20 years ago that I had some regards for. But after learning over the last 8 or 9 years what he's been engaged in, and have challenged him to address this. And so he works on behalf of those wealthy property owners and tax appeals attorneys downtown, and shifts the burdens of their tax breaks onto homeowners in the South and South region, which is the district that he represents. More than 10 or 12 years ago, he gave an $80 million tax abatement to Walmart in Country Club Hills, and more than 100 of those homeowners came to push when I was the chairman of the real estate division with these special assessments of $20,000 to $30,000 because they couldn't afford to pay them, because that burden got shifted onto the homeowners. This was Larry Rogers Jr.'s doing. And he got a pass. And he got a pass because we didn't know. We always thought that it was just the assessor. But at that time, the assessor and the Board of Review were in cahoots, because Larry Rogers Jr. went to the Board of Review, and Joseph Berrios, who was at the Board of Review, went to the assessor's office, so they were both tied at the hip. And both of them were benefiting from these wealthy property owners. Well, we as the people are going to have to understand who our friends are and who our friends are not. Larry Rogers Jr., though you voted for him and you sent him back to office, and we tried our very best to inform and to educate, we just didn't have enough bandwidth to do it, to get the message out to people who Larry Rogers Jr. really is. Larry Rogers Jr. has gotten away with it. So he's been somewhat of a darling to the Black community, because he goes out and he does these dog and pony shows. He does these little community or town hall events showing you how you can appeal your taxes and maybe get $100 reduced off of your taxes. But what he doesn't show you on the other side, that he's giving hundreds of millions of dollars in tax cuts to wealthy people that are saddling you with it. And so the $100 that you save, he saddles you with another $1,000 or $2,000 that you don't even realize that you're subsidizing the taxes of wealthy property owners downtown. So in my comments today was about those very wealthy property owners. Now, I don't have near the wealth that many of them have, but what I did do was to show that when we benefit from more, then we have the responsibility to pay more, or certainly to pay our fair share, and not to shift our burdens or our responsibilities, because they're not burdens, our responsibilities. If you have a building that's worth 20, 30, 40, 50 million, 10 million, 15 million, if you have a property that is valued in that area and you don't want to pay your fair share, then sell the property. You shouldn't own the property. If you don't want to pay your way, you don't want to pay your freight, then you shouldn't have the property. You should not be able to go buy a 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollar property and then turn around and have it assessed as though it's worth half that amount, so that you don't have to pay your fair share of taxes, and then shift the discount that you are given onto people who can least afford it, people who are not wealthy. That's what's happening. And we, at the grassroots, have got to break it up. We have got to put a serious spotlight on it. And so we're going to attend board meetings. We're going to attend these events, and we're going to challenge the current system, and we're going to challenge people like Larry Rogers Jr. and George Cardenas, whose election is coming up in 2026. We need to make sure that we get a new, more representative Hispanic candidate to run against George Cardenas in 2026. And then, when we have the opportunity, which is not going to be for another 4 years, to get rid of Larry Rogers Jr., we should get rid of him. Actually, we should put up a serious pressure campaign to have him to resign that office. I don't think we should be waiting to another election. We can't afford him. Now that the wolves or the covers have been pulled back and we know the real deal, Larry Rogers Jr., we, as the public, we need to mount up a serious campaign. Thousands of us calling for Larry Rogers Jr. to resign that office. He's not a friend of the black community. He's certainly not a friend of property owners in the 2nd District. The cover has been pulled back and the sheets have been pulled back, and he's exposed in his nakedness of his corruption and what he's been doing to the black community on the south side of Chicago and in the southern suburbs and in the southwest suburbs. Whatever portion of that is covered by the 2nd District. Larry Rogers Jr. needs to go. And we need to mount up the pressure to make sure that that happens. We certainly need to make sure that we are at every related relative board meeting at the Cook County Board of Review and at the Cook County Board as it relates to property taxes. And we need to be calling for his resignation every single opportunity that we get. We need to let him know that we are fully aware of what he has been doing and what he is doing. We're fully aware of it. You can no longer hide. So you're going to have to pilfer from the people that you're supposed to be representing with the lights on. We know the game. So that's what I did today. And you had all of these people from the north side of Chicago, wealthy property owners, complaining that they were no longer going to be getting a pass. They no longer were going to be benefiting from this loophole in the law. That it was time that they paid their equitable share of taxes relative to what their properties are valued at. If you can't afford it, sell the property. Sell the property. So, you bought the property and you had this low tax rate that you were paying. But you were paying that low tax rate because of a loophole in the law. And that loophole got found by the Inspector General. And the Inspector General said that the language needs to change. You need to change that language. And so that's what the assessor did. When they discovered that these properties, and it's not a ton of properties, but it's still property that these people are getting with not paying their fair share. As well as you have people downtown, corporations, investment companies who own these properties downtown, not paying their fair share because they have someone by the name of Larry Rogers Jr. and George Cardenas, 2 out of the 3 commissioners, that basically rubber stamp any tax appeal attorney representing properties that are managed or run by BOMA. And then shift that burden onto you and I, such as what they just did in this previous cycle, where 20% of commercial tax cuts were shifted onto the homeowners on the south side of Chicago and the southern suburbs. That's why, in part, that you saw these stark increases in your taxes. One, because in many of the southern suburbs, you don't have a real strong commercial foundation. And 2, the commercial tax burdens from places in Chicago were shifted onto the property owners in the south and southern suburbs. Again, by Larry Rogers Jr. All right, so we've got to be engaged. So now I want to make sure that as a result of that, this is going to be an issue that I am going to keep us acutely focused on as we work to continue to build the independent Black voting bloc. As we continue to build, we continue to work, we're going to be taking on this issue. And we're going to need for all hands on deck so that they know that they can no longer do this in secret, that we are aware and we are going to take action by it. And one of the actions that I believe we should take, in my never to be humble opinion, certainly about this issue, is that Larry Rogers Jr., at the very least, must go. Larry Rogers Jr. must resign. And that we, the people, should have a voice in who replaces Larry Rogers Jr. in that seat. So we've got that work to do. To get more information about what we're going to be doing on that, I need you to text. To get into the text alert, text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385. I'll put it in the chat so that you have it. Our liberation is only going to come by us. It's not coming by anybody else. It's only going to come by us. Let me just say hello to those of you who have joined me. I see Monique McGee. Thank you for being here. Rosetta Guy, how you doing, Rosetta? Thank you so much. Eric Russell, Wanda Webb, thank you all for joining us. Make sure that you share this with other like-minded people in your social media circle. So I do the podcast so that I could bring you information so that we together can be empowered to organize ourselves together, that we can liberate our communities wherever we live in the city of Chicago, the county of Cook, and the state of Illinois. So all of our communities can thrive as every other thriving community in Chicago, right? So that is what our efforts are. Now let me switch gears here. Over the weekend, we all know that Joe Biden, President Joseph Biden, one of the presidents in my lifetime, in our lifetime, who has been a transformational president. Not a good president, but a great president. Far beyond anybody's expectations. Certainly far beyond my expectations. Joe Biden has been a great president. All of his years in office, all of his years in public service, all of the mistakes, all the bad decisions, and in particular, the bad decision about supporting the crime bill of 1994. By the way, that every other representative except for 8 supported and campaigned on, including black representatives. And Bill Clinton signed it into law. Served as vice president under Barack Obama. I believe was the most consequential time of his public service because he got to see a bunch of entitled, old, racist white men who would sacrifice their own people in order for a black president not to be successful. He watched it up close. He watched people who he had worked with literally take a vow in the caucus room restaurant on the day of the inauguration. Newt Gingrich, Mitch McConnell, in that group, and vowed that they would do everything to stop any progress that Barack Obama tried to make. They took a vow to be as disruptive, no matter how good the policy was, and no matter how badly it would hurt their constituents, that they must make him a one-term president. They were willing to sacrifice the country. Joseph R. Biden witnessed it to his horror. He witnessed it. When his son died, he decided not to run for president. Then Hillary Clinton campaign wasn't successful. Donald Trump ended up becoming the president, 45th president of the United States of America. What a time that we had. Joe Biden witnessed all of that and felt compelled that he had to run for president. He ran for president, he won, and he has been the consequential, transformational president. Now, I believe that the most impactful part of his tenure was those 8 years that he witnessed as the vice president of the United States, what people who he had worked with, what they were doing, and how nefarious they were at trying to destroy and willingness to destroy even the country in order to defeat Barack Obama. It wasn't successful, by the way, as we all know, because Barack Obama was reelected. I believe that when history is written, When the story is told, I believe that somewhere in the memoirs of Joseph Biden is going to be that or similar to that story about when, what was the most impactful, consequential time of your time in public office. I believe that those 8 years as president was, well, let's say the most transformational. What was the most transformational time? Those 8 years as vice president. Those 8 years as vice president. Now, it is still, and I'm glad that the president, I'm not glad that he resigned from or stepped aside from running for president. And I'm going to tell you why. We have, by Constitution, a president and a vice president. And the vice president is chosen and selected because they are qualified to step into the presidency should the president become incapacitated or unable to serve. That's what the role of the vice president is on standby for. Should that happen, Kamala Harris was selected by Joseph Biden to be the vice president of the United States, and she has been a remarkable vice president. Much of the legislation, including the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill signed into law by Joe Biden, the $16.5 billion that have gone to fund HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, $16.5 billion in 3 years. Much of that, her senatorial experience, Joe Biden's senatorial and vice president and now president experience, was very highly qualified, is highly qualified to do so. Now, you mean to tell me that these elitist, corporatist Democrats, not talking about working class or those who are the progressives, who look out for the working class, who look out for the poor. I'm talking about those corporatist, elitist Democrats like Barack Obama, David Axelrod, David Plouffe, James Carville, and alike. Show to me just how politically stupid they are. The reason, if Joe Biden was so far down in the spectrum of these, whatever these polls are that they like to allude to, none of which I have ever been polled by, said that he was 20%, like 80% of all Democrats. I wasn't in that 80%. And none of the people that I talked to were in favor of Joe Biden stepping down, except for people who considered themselves to be a part of the whole MAGA cult. So I don't know who it was that they were polling, but I'm just telling you the people that I talked to, the everyday people that I talked to, was not saying what those elitists were saying. Because if they didn't say anything, it's like saying it. And they spent all of this time, the Democrats spent all of this time going after a president, a transformational president, who had a struggling 90 minutes. For whatever the reason was, it was not a good outing for him. Post that debate, based on their own polls, based on their own litmus test, the race was within 1 point difference. 1. 2, almost 3 weeks later, based on their polls, if you, I don't live by polls, but based on their polls. So they would go after a man who had a bad night. But had 3 phenomenal years of being a transformational president, passing landmark legislation, got us out of COVID. The greatest investment in climate protection in history, had some movement into gun reforms, capped insulin. Those who need insulin, $35 a month, and prescription medication, those are seniors at $2,000 a year. Tax credits that cut child poverty in half, that Republicans took away from the most vulnerable people. But they spent, and the other guy who is convicted of cooking the books, 34 felony counts, found liable for raping a woman who has now more than $350 million in a judgment, civil judgment against him, 50 counts of other federal and state charges against him in Washington, D.C., and Georgia, and Florida, even though the Florida case was dismissed, but it will be overturned. And I don't care if they don't go to court until next year. He's going to court because he's going to lose. But the Democrats, the Republicans, those law-abiding Republicans, the party of law, the rule of law, Republicans, embraced a 2-time impeached, 34 felony count convicted felon, liable rapist. The Republicans wrapped their arms around this man completely. And the Democrats spent all their time pushing Joe Biden out. Now, They said that because they were speaking to their constituents, because of all the people that they were speaking to, that the numbers were just not there for Joe Biden to be successful at re-election. If that were true, they were there because of the Democrats pushing this narrative that he should step aside while they focus nothing on the convicted felon. Because I believe that if the Democrats had wrapped their arms around this transformational president who happened to be older, who happens to be wiser, obviously mentally capable and cognitive, to be able to get the landmark legislation put together and to have it passed. If they had gotten behind him in totality, it would be a very different conversation. But they persuaded people because just maybe, now wait for it, here it is, just maybe they did what they did because they didn't like the idea of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris being as successful as president and vice president as they are. Maybe. I'm just throwing out some food for thought. I don't have any way of proving this. I'm just throwing out some questions. Or I'm just throwing out some opinions. Maybe the elite Democrats didn't like the idea. They'd rather have a man who was the United States versus Donald Trump. They'd rather be okay with this guy. They'd rather be okay with this guy who is facing all of these felony counts than to be okay with a guy who was transformational, who was not under indictment, who's never been sued for discrimination on housing and rental, who didn't have a secret code to write a C on every residential rental application for every person that was a black person that applied so that they would not rent to them. This is the guy that some confused black folks are supporting, who he would never support them. He would never have them to live in one of his properties. But this is the guy that they're hanging his hat on their head. I believe that these stupid, so-called, well-informed Democrats didn't like the idea of a presidency being as transformational, as progressive, as productive, as beneficial, and as prosperous as it has been, and that it will quail the accomplishments of presidents going all the way back to the Franklin Delano Roosevelt days, 87 years you have not seen a president or a presidential ticket, Biden-Harris administration, that has been able to pass landmark legislation. Let me just, I keep it close by, because sometimes you all don't, you all don't always watch. But I like to keep my research close by, and I just like to remind you of these are policies, and you can find them at the U.S. Treasury Department, same way that I did. The report that came out. And here, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, investing in America. I want to start right here in Illinois, in Cook County. This is what this president, this is what he is bringing to Illinois, just one state. I'm going to go through and just highlight some other states too. Then I'm also going to show you what he's doing and what they have done policy-wise through these bills, the Infrastructure Act, the Chips and Science Act, the CARES Act 2, the American Rescue Plan, and the Inflation Reduction Act. The policies that are coming through those that are going to benefit millions of Black people in this country because of this transformational president. And I believe this is Mark Wallace's view and Mark Wallace's never to take it back opinion of why these stupid Democrats did what they did by pushing Joe Biden out. I wouldn't count on those people being on my team. I would never count on them. Even though they claim that they're riding on the same team, I would be looking out of the one eye. I would be keeping an eye on them because they can't be trusted. They can't be trusted. Not by me, ever. Will I trust a David Axelrod again? A James Carville again? A Barack Obama again? I really didn't, The guy who is, building the mausoleum unto himself out on Stony Island. I don't really care that we don't have, well, I take that back because we do need the history. The even stupid idea of not having a presidential library for the first Black president of the United States. It's not a presidential library. It's a mausoleum unto himself. So history will be told in a very different way at that mausoleum, which I think is going to be a colossal failure. A colossal failure. But I'm glad I have this on live, on tape, recording it as well. Because we have to wait a few years, some years, till we realize that the mausoleum is a complete failure and will be a complete failure. Oh, whenever they, put the lipstick on and, get it all dolled up. People will come for the novelty of it. Of course. But systemically, it's going to be a colossal failure. But let me talk about some major success. Here is what President Biden, the one that they pushed out. Now, I will tell you this. Well, I'll tell you that later. So the guy who they claim was losing the election and losing other seats in Illinois, President Biden's Investing in America agenda, this is what he's delivering to Illinois: $8.4 billion in private sector commitments, $16.6 billion in public investments in clean energy, infrastructure, and manufacturing, $2.1 billion in funding from the Biden administration to provide affordable, reliable, high-speed internet to everyone in Illinois, $11.1 billion in transportation investments in roads, bridges, public transit, rails, ports, and airports, as well as electric school buses and transit buses, electric vehicle charging stations, $2.6 billion in private sector commitments to invest in electric vehicles and batteries. They're building one out in Kankakee that is going to provide more than 2,500 to 3,000 jobs. Those jobs are paying at a base of $89,000 a year with benefits in Kankakee. $2 billion investment. Let's go further north to Belvedere, where there was almost shuttered auto plant. $2 billion investment. That's bringing back 1,800 to 2,000 jobs, average earning $89,000 a year. $455,000.1 new jobs for Illinois, $1 billion announced to provide clean water across Illinois and improve the water infrastructure. That includes $337.1 million dedicated to replacing toxic lead pipes. Chicago Union Station will receive a total of $94 million across the two projects to upgrade its passenger rail platforms. Both projects will add capacity to the station, reduce delays, and prepare Chicago Union Station for the future rail expansion and increased service. The city of Chicago has been awarded $144 million. $144 million to rehabilitate 4 bridges over the Calumet River on the south side of Chicago. The Department of Energy awarded up to $1 billion to Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana for the Midwest Hydrogen Hub. This hub will produce clean hydrogen from renewable and nuclear energy and natural gas with carbon capture, and it will be used for industry such as steel and glass production, transportation, and power generation. Infrastructure. Let's go to the infrastructure. $15.7 billion in the bipartisan infrastructure law that is bringing 488 projects including $11.1 billion for transportation, $6.7 billion roads and bridges, $2.9 billion public transit, $494 million in airports, $268 million for ports and waterways, $1.6 billion for high-speed internet, $982 million for clean water, $249 million for clean transportation, $239 million to clean up pollution and lead pipes, $1.4 billion for resilience, the strengthening of communities, readiness for climate impact and other threats. His clean energy agenda under the Biden-Harris administration. They're bringing $8.4 billion in commitments to invest in the 21st century industries, including $4.9 billion to clean power project, $416 million for clean energy manufacturing, $1 billion in public funding has been announced to grants, rebates, and other initiatives to accelerate the development of clean energy, clean buildings, and clean manufacturing. This is not exclusive or inclusive of the clean energy tax incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act. Lowering costs, $263 million in home energy rebates, 2.4 million seniors and other Medicare beneficiaries will save money on prescription drugs costs because of the President Biden's $2,000 yearly cap on out-of-pocket prescription drugs cost a $35 monthly cap per incident. 399,000 individuals in Illinois signed up for the health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. This is the guy who we have been told, this is the guy that we have been told this is the guy that we have been told that is going to lose the election for Democrats. Somebody please help me to understand, in my naivety, my inexperience, of how a person who is winning as big for the people as Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris has done. For the life of me, please help me to understand how that person is losing. And the guy who is convicted felon of 34 counts, twice impeached, indicted of 50 some other federal charges, that this guy is less of a problem than the guy that doesn't have any felony indictments, that has not been found liable for rape, not even accused of rape. Please help me to understand it, because I can't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me that this is where we are. That this is where we are. I really need for somebody to help me to understand how it is these stupid, and I'm using the term stupid, and I hope that it goes viral, not for monetary sake, but that it goes viral and it gets into the head of those stupid elitists like David Axelrod, James Carville, Barack Obama, and the rest of that ilk, rather than wrapping their arms around and encouraging their colleagues to do the same and unify and said, look, Joseph Biden is our president. We will re-elect him as president. If he is not able to serve, there is a fitting, qualified vice president who stands alert and ready to take the mantle if necessary. That's what a vice president is for. Being able to step into the presidency if, in fact, the president of the United States cannot serve. That is what a vice president, according to the Constitution, what their responsibility is. So then, if you're telling me that this is all about Joe Biden, it's not all about Joe Biden, because you're ignoring his vice president. You're ignoring Kamala Harris. You're ignoring the vice president of the United States, a former senator, a former attorney general, a former federal prosecutor. What you are saying is that you're doing another picture of Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man. You are pretending that she does not even exist. Or you're not pretending, you've exposed yourself that she, in your mind, she does not exist. And you found an avenue that gave you sanction to give thrust to what you felt and what you wanted and what you thought all along. Barack Obama, James Carville, David Axelrod, the three stupids, and the rest of the so-called bright, brilliant, strategic Democrats. Well, as somebody who was not all in for Joe Biden, and if he had to redeem himself, he redeemed himself for bad decisions of the past. But to look past his vice president as though she was invisible is reprehensible. It's reprehensible. I can tell you this: I have very little regard for Barack Obama and his gutless lack of character, lack of conscience, lack of courage to show some real leadership of saying, we've got to support Joe Biden. We'll elect him and get him elected And if he can't, we have a ready, willing, and able Kamala Harris as vice president to step right into the position and continue the great agenda that was led by the current president of the United States. That's what the presidency and the vice presidency is all about. If what I'm saying has no ring of truth to it or makes sense, why was all this conversation about about Biden stepping out, stepping aside, passing the torch? They didn't say pass the torch to Kamala Harris. They just say pass the torch. Pass the torch to who? The Democrats. They made their choice. They pushed him out at 1:45 p.m. on yesterday. Joe Biden put the country ahead of himself. Because all of those who he had supported found a loophole to abandon him. And in so many words, they would probably have rather had 34 felony convicted felon person of rape. That wasn't a big deal. Know why I don't think it was a big deal? Because they weren't talking about it. They were talking about Joe Biden, who had a bad debate. They weren't even talking about the accomplishments of Joe Biden, what he's done over the last 3 years. They weren't talking about the things like what's in the United States Treasury Department report. That says that the report shows that as the Biden administration's policies have driven a historic economic recovery, we've also been building the economy we need for the long term, one that allows all communities to reach their economic potential, said Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo. The report shows the progress we're making on building a more equitable economy, narrowing the racial wealth gap, and addressing enduring inequities in wealth accumulation as we continue to implement and investing in America agenda. We remain committed to capitalizing on the progress made during the recovery and investing in people, places, and infrastructure that have been too often left behind. That's just part of the report. So what I am saying to us, please, I know I'm going to talk about this and I'm going to try to move on. But what I'm saying here is this. This is exactly why we cannot put all of our eggs into one basket, meaning that we cannot look to an individual to be the liberator for our people. We must become those leaders, says Eddie Glaude, that we've been looking for. Because those other guys will disappoint just like they did here, because it doesn't fit their agenda. And they should not be determining the agenda for you and I. We should be making that determination. Now, let me make it very clear that I will be very critical of certain people within the Democratic Party. I'm not leaving the Democratic Party. I want to make the Democratic Party be more reflective and representative in producing transformational policies like the ones that came out of this administration for years and decades to come, that is going to be transformational to Black lives all across the city of Chicago, the county of Cook, and the state of Illinois, and the country for that matter. But that is going to become our responsibility. It's not going to happen by your alderperson. It's not going to happen by your individual mayor. It's not going to happen by your governor. It's not going to happen by your state representatives. It's not going to happen by your state senators. It's not going to happen by your United States senators. It's not going to happen by your judiciary. It's not going to happen by any individual. It is going to happen by we, the collective people. That is why we have to get out of this celebritizing public officials, because our public officials do some very stupid things. Some very stupid things. And this is by far one of the most stupidest things that they could have done. Now, I am glad that Joe Biden immediately threw his support and endorsement behind Kamala Harris, as well as other people have done, the Clintons, J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Kentucky, the governor of Michigan, Whitmire, Dick Durbin, and others. I'm glad to see so many that are endorsing her. Now, this process has to take its course, but it should be on a time warp basis. It should be happening on a time warp basis. And the Democrats better win November the 5th. They better win. Because if the Democrats fail to deliver on November the 5th, it will be because of their own fault, their own undoing. Not Joe Biden, but the stupid elites. Not Joe Biden, but those elites who had no guts, who had no character or courage to wrap their arms of support and get everybody else to be in unison of supporting this president. Let me tell you that if you and I, those of you who join who have joined this podcast. This is not a monetized podcast where I get any money. I pay for it. I'm not looking to be famous. What I am hopeful to be is of service, that I can encourage us to band ourselves together in mass numbers so that we as the people could be representative of making the people that we put in public offices accountable to deliver what it is that we want. We can do that. We can have that power, but we've got to organize and mobilize ourselves together in order to make that happen. So, as you see in the chat, to get in the text alerts, to receive the text alerts, you got to download. Make sure you have Zoom on your phone or on your computer or on your iPad. Text 10X10 to the number 855-909-1385. That's 10X10. Text 10X10 to the number 855-909-1385. On Thursday, we send out a Zoom meeting link around between 12 and 12:15. And Thursday nights, we have the meeting at 6:30 by Zoom. I'm looking forward to the day that we will have meetings back in our old location, 10833 South Halsted, formerly the Lagos Baptist Assembly. We need to really get ourselves organized. And I mean in large numbers. Large numbers. Even if we got 100,000 people, if we got 100,000 people together before the DNC, it would have a huge impact. It will have national implications. 100,000 of us, 10 by 10 to win, our own independent Black voting bloc, would be an example and a model for the rest of the country, because we in the Black community have never, ever had power. Never. Well, you say, well, what do you mean? We never had power. What do you mean by that? We have been largely fractionized by other people's agenda and other people, whether they're Black or white. We have been fractionized to following one person or the other, rather than us organizing ourselves and determining who it is that we will send, not follow. Who it is that we will deliver to the representative offices in the city, county, and the state, as well as our federal representatives. When we make that move, when we decide and when we do that, then we will have power. We will have power to choose. We have power to fire. We have power to elect. We will have power to unelect. We will have power to call for resignation. We will have power to determine legislation. We will have power to determine policies for the Black community. And if they don't deliver, we have the power to remove them. That is what organizing a massive union of black voters. That's real power. We don't have it now. We've never had it because it's never been totally up to us. We've been following somebody else's agenda and never coming to determine our own agenda. So when I was on WVON, which I was on for probably, I guess, a little over 10 years, I formulated the citizens to abolish red light cameras. And out of that political action committee came 10 by 10 to win. And so we have both these political action committees, one dealing with a specific issue and the other organizing a body of like-minded voters that we will be in the position to deal with a multiplicity of issues. That is what 10 by 10 to win is. It is to expand the umbrella of black people and build a web of cohesive, like-minded, cooperative black voters to have the power to determine our own destiny. That is precisely what 10 by 10 to win is. And the reason why it's called 10 by 10 is because we all know some people, maybe 10, that we could get that trust us to go do anything with. So why don't we use that influence, 10 by 10, to build the most powerful, influential black voting bloc in the history of the world? Until we do that, until we do it, we're going to have these struggles as a people. Now, individually, there are those of us individually that are doing fine, and black people individually have done fine all the way back to slavery. Well, you say, well, how is that possible? Well, the house slave enjoyed certain privileges that the field slave did not, but they were both still slaves. So you had one privileged, if you will, still a slave, than the one who was the field slave. The house slave got to sleep in a nice warm bed and wear nice clothes and take orders inside the house, give orders outside the house, snitch on the slaves that might have been threatening to leave, which is called a meritorious manumission. Yeah, individually, people have done well from our communities. It's not enough for individuals to do well, because if you really care about the equities or the inequities of your communities, you really can't celebrate your success or advancement you really can't celebrate it. You really can't celebrate, because Not if you really care. Not if you really care. Because you want to make sure that people in your community have an opportunity to succeed. But I just want to read something to you that I like to remind us of every now and then. Hopefully I can find it, but just bear with me. I'll find it. Then I want to read it to us because I think that the words are so powerful. And then I'm going to play a clip. I'm going to play a clip that those of you who are just joining us now, you have not seen. I played this clip last week. So stay right there. Don't leave. As a matter of fact, reach out to some of your other cohorts and tell them to tune in because I'm going to play this clip. I want us all to watch this clip again. I'm going to play it from time to time. It's a very powerful clip. But I want us to watch it again. I want you to watch it because I don't ever get tired of watching or listening to impactful messages, powerful messages. That cause for me to think and then also cause for me to act. And I'm just hoping that we could come together and do this. I'm really hoping that you and I and others and the people in your trusted circles, that we can come together wherever we are, from the west side to the south side to the south suburbs, wherever we are, to the north side, wherever we as Black people, that we can just start in droves coming together as one union of an independent block of Black voters called 10 by 10 to win. And let me tell you what that will do. If we come together, now it is an independent Black voting block, but it's more than an independent Black voting block. If we came together in the numbers that we envision, in the manner of the thematic thrust, there will be a wave of people in the political spectrum, meaning representatives, that will be calling to meet with us. If we were to put together 200,000 people, 200,000 people represent about 10,000 people in all of our wards or districts, whatever you want to label them as. And if we were to put together that many people, that means that we have power to determine any election seat in Chicago, Cook County, or the state of Illinois, anyone. Because nobody can win a citywide, countywide, or statewide office without getting the Black vote. And if we took control of the Black vote, then they would have to respond to the Black vote. Before an election took place, they would have to respond. That means that they would have to respond in legislation. They would have to respond in saying, oh, what is it that you want us to do? Because I don't want to be on the chopping blocks. I like this position. I like this job. What is it that we can do to earn and keep your support. What is it? That's the kind of pressure that you would apply, but it would be from an organizing form of pressure. Not pressure where you stand out on a street corner with a bullhorn yelling and screaming. No, you're organizing. We've done the protesting thing, and we may have to do it again. But we've not done the organizing thing. And what I am saying is, let's do the organizing thing, and you'll really see what a bullhorn that really is. Because they, meaning those people in the political positions, black and white, don't want for you to organize. Because they don't want that kind of pressure applied to them. And it's not being anti-anybody. It's not being anti-anybody. So, as I was saying to you before, individualism is a toxic cancer. So I want to read this. And then I'm going to play a clip. And I want to ask for your participation. And I guarantee every one of you that if we do this together, I guarantee you we cannot fail. Cannot. We will be transformational to our communities, to the city, the county, and the state if we do this. If we don't do it, we won't be transformational, and we'll continue to stagnate. There'll still continue to be some of us who will do well, not nearly as many as that could do well if we organize ourselves in our own union of voters. 10 by 10 we win. Now, Stokely Carmichael. Now, you've heard me say that individualism is a toxic cancer. Individualism is a toxic cancer. This is what Stokely Carmichael says. Stokely Carmichael said, who later became Kwame Ture. He said that no black person in this country makes any advancement solely based on his or her talent or worth. All individual advancement is based on mass struggle. We make no progress in this world without shedding our blood. Therefore, brothers and sisters, your advancement and success does not belong to you. It belongs to the people. And if you do not use your success or advancement for the benefit of the people, it is a betrayal of the people who shed their blood for you.
This past Tuesday, on Tuesday night, I was watching a debate. Yeah, I kind of felt the same way when I was watching the debate, the way some of you all just responded. But God placed something on my heart that I would like to share with everyone here and those who are online with us today. Politicians never do the right thing unless a moral witness, a prophetic wing, or an ethical enclave stand before them and demand change. Abraham Lincoln did not free the slaves because he felt like it. but he was forced into glory by the moral witness of the likes of Frederick Douglass. FDR did not create the New Deal because it was a good idea, but he was forced into glory by the moral witness of people who demanded action during the Great Depression. Lyndon Baines Johnson did not sign the Civil Rights Bill and the Civil Rights Act because it was a nice idea, but he was forced into glory by the work of Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, and Fannie Lou Hamer, and others. Unfortunately, in our American political system, candidates and parties are beholden to special interest. But never forget, we the people have power. We the people, black people, kissed by nature's sun, have power. We have power in our vote. We have power in organizing. We have power with our pocketbook. We have power with our voice, and we have spiritual power connected to our faith. Black people have historically saved America from itself. Black people have historically been a moral witness demanding this democracy include all who yearn to breathe free. I believe the choice this November is not between two candidates, but two visions of this nation. One vision romanticizes the Confederate mythology that was birthed from the antebellum South. Another vision still sees America as the yet-to-be United States of America. I cannot support any vision. You can vote for whoever you want to, but I cannot support any vision that speaks to making America great again, because my conscience and my soul tell me when a person states America with the past tense language was great, I must speak up and say, what year are you talking about? Was it before I could vote? Or was it a year I was considered nothing more as chattel? Was it a year when women did not have the right to vote? Or was it the year before unions had been organized? I cannot support anyone's false nostalgia of white supremacy. I believe democracy is on the ballot. For some, and I understand it, the only issue is the horror, tragedy, pain, and destruction of human thriving in the occupied territory we call Gaza. For others, it is Gaza, the Congo, the Sudan, and Haiti. But I say to us all, we must look at all issues, foreign and domestic. For the question before us is, what will this country be? Not for our children, not for our grandchildren, but for our great-grandchildren. We must, as a church, and when I speak of the church, I said we must, as a church, the black church collectively, not churches that just have black people in them. I'm talking about the black church of Frederick Douglass, the black church of Harriet Tubman, the black church of W.E.B. Du Bois and the souls of black folk, the black church of A. Philip Randolph, the black church of Ida B. Wells, the black church of Ella Baker, the black church of James Lawson, the black church of Willie Barrow, the black church of Jesse Jackson, the black church of Jeremiah Wright, the black church of James Cone, and the black church of Martin Luther King Jr. The question for us today, since democracy is on the ballot, is will we stand up for the 295,000 people who die as a result of poverty every year? The question for us today, since democracy is on the ballot, is will we speak for the 87 million people who are uninsured in this nation? The question for us today, since democracy is on the ballot, will we stand up for people such as members in this congregation who have to decide whether to pay their rent or purchase prescription drugs? The question for us today, since democracy is on the ballot, will we stand with our union sisters and brothers who are under attack by corporations who want to outlaw unions? For those who do not know, unions ended child labor. Unions created the 40-hour work week. Unions created the 8-hour work day. Unions provided unemployment benefits, workers' compensation, and your retirement benefits. That is because of the work of unions. The question for us today, since democracy is on the ballot, will we fight for HBCUs? They are being attacked across this nation, where conservative legislatures want the land that is our historically black colleges sit upon. They are coming after North Carolina A&T. They're coming after North Carolina Central University. They're coming after Florida A&M. They're coming after Alabama A&M, Jackson State, Albany State, Fort Valley Southern, any state institution that is a historically black college. Since democracy is on the ballot, will women, let me say it again, will women, not men, will women, not men, but will women have the autonomy to make medical decisions about their body, and will people of faith be present to offer compassion, love, prayer, and support regardless of their decision? Will we fight to ensure that every returning citizen has full citizenship rights after they've served their time in prison? Since democracy is on the ballot, will we seek to abolish the penal system of incarceration that is destroying our community? Since democracy is on the ballot, will we vote to protect our right to vote across this nation? Conservative legislators are passing laws to restrict voting rights and gerrymandering districts to dilute black political power. Since democracy is on the ballot, will we fight to protect this planet as we are seeing the effects of climate change right here in Chicago? Since democracy is on the ballot, you must know there are 46 judicial appointments the next president will make that will reshape voting rights, unionization, homelessness, and even possibly outlaw historically black colleges. Since democracy is on the ballot, I'm not a one-issue voter, but I'm a voter who votes to protect black issues. Since democracy is on the ballot, I'm asking today, right now, everyone in this village, if you are a registered voter, if you are an organizer, if you are part of a union, if you lead a block club, if you are a local activist, it's time for us to get together as a community and collectively as a church and do what our ancestors have done generation after generation and save this nation from itself. Democracy is on the ballot. Now, I said what I said, and I ain't taking it back.
He said what he said and ain't taking it back, and we should be saying the same thing. Again, I'm asking for all of us, to go to 10by10towin.org. That's 10x10towin.org. Register there. Doesn't cost you anything. There is no cost, but it will cost us if we don't organize ourselves to liberate ourselves. So I'm asking you, go to the website and then also send the text. Send the text. It's in the chat. 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385. Get into the text alert and join the meeting this Thursday night. Hear what we are doing, what we need you, and the people in your trusted circles for us to empower ourselves to self-determine going forward everything that we want for ourselves has to be done by us, meaning by the masses of us, not any one of us, but by the masses of us making those determinations. So please text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385. Listen, I want to thank all of you for participating tonight. I want to thank you all for being here. Be with me tomorrow night on another edition of the Legal Hour with Judge Leonard Murray at 9 o'clock. We will be continuing answering and taking all of your questions, your legal questions, right here on the People's Show's Legal Hour at 9 o'clock with Cook County Judge Leonard Murray at 9 p.m. Right here, you'll be able to type your questions into the chat, and I'll read them off to the judge, and he'll read off your questions. But make sure you join it. We always have a great conversation for an hour, from 9 o'clock until 10 tomorrow night, with Judge Leonard Murray on the Tuesday night edition of the People's Show's Legal Hour. That's going to do it for me tonight. I want to thank you all for joining us and tuning into the podcast. And let's stay engaged. We got to get active. Despair is not an option, and certainly it is not a spectator sport. Everybody is on the first team, and everybody's got to be in play in order for us to win. All right, 10 by 10 to win. We'll see you tomorrow night for another edition of the People Show right here on Facebook Live, Instagram, YouTube, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Good night.